Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more Vati, and this time I decided to watch a Dark Souls Prepare to Cry. This time, Prepare to Cry Remastered, The Legend of Artorias the Abysswalker. I really enjoyed the Elden Ring Prepare to Cry video. So I feel like I'll enjoy. Now this one's older, of course, but I think still enjoyed. I've enjoyed like every single Vati video that we have watched thus far. So I do not believe that this will be any different. Please do go check out the links in the description box below before we dive in, and please do go check out the gaming channel here on YouTube. Blah 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 blah. All that out of the way, all that stupid YouTube stuff. Let's say at the beginning of videos and whatnot. I don't know how to YouTube. I've been been doing this for 4 years and I still have no fucking clue. Anyways, God, it's been 4 years. Ugh. Let's dive into some sadness here.
In Gwyn's Age of Fire, there were 4 knights who distinguished themselves above all others. First, there was Hawkeye Goth, who fought in the First War against the dragons. He exulted in the
This is peaceful. So the tears will be coming.
thrill of the hunt, plucking dragons out of the sky with his enormous greatbow. Soon, the only dragons left were in his memories, which he revisited endlessly. Fighting on the ground was Ornstein, the dragon slayer. He wielded a long, lightning cross spear that could be stamped deep into a stone dragon's hide. Its curious design went on to remind many of an exiled god of war, though none of them dared to speak his name. And then there was Kiran, whose talents differed considerably from the previous 2. A stealthy assassin, she would have been no match for dragons, and so she must have killed for Gwyn in the Age of Fire to follow. She dazzled her foes with streaks of gold in the night, and then stung with the vicious poison of her silver tracer. But in the Age of Man to come, none were as well equipped as the great knight Artorias. For nothing, not dragons, nor disunity, nor even his enemies, frightened Gwyn like the dark. The dark soul of man filled the Lord of Light with fear, for one day, Gwyn knew, the fire would fade, and humanity would inherit the world. His world. So while he still had time and power, Gwyn began to rig the world in his favor. Mankind had stood amongst those who set out to slay the ancient dragons, and, as if in thanks, Gwyn bestowed upon pygmies and men the Ringed City, an enormous, gilded city located at World's End. The walls were as tall as mountains, and above them soared Medea, an immortal archdragon that was raised by the gods. Below slumbered Gwyn's youngest daughter, the Princess Filianore, a woman of enormous faith and power, who Gwyn gave up to protect the pygmies until the very end of the world. And at first glance, you might think these acts benevolent, you might think they were kind, but in the end, it was just a trick of the light.
Hold on, that is a beautiful shot. Hold on, let me go back. I want to see it. Yes, look at that. Ooh. Gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Just a trick of the light. The walls were not for protection. The dragon had an eternal duty to battle the dark, and Gwyn's daughter, Filianore, would never see her father.
No longer smash. Not into dead things. No.
Again. The purpose of the Ringed City was not to protect the holders of the original Dark Soul. It was to imprison them, like a ring of fire that encircles the darkness of humanity. And man was, in fact, branded with this very seal, the Dark Sign. And despite clear evidence of their heroism in the war against the dragons, their Dark Knights never were lauded for their service. So it's no wonder, then, that in all of the spellcraft and the hexes that stem from humanity, one thing remains constant. It craves a free will of its own, and it writhes against its shackles. Perhaps the first example of this was the Mad King. He was pygmy royalty, and he rebelled against the light. We have no idea what crimes he committed, but they must have been terrible, for he was put to death by Shira, a knight of Filianore. Only the Mad King would not die, and She-Ra, with the Mad King impossibly entwined around her spear, had no choice but to hold him quietly in a dark room until the end of time. There were, of course, other human cities outside of the Ringed City. One such example was the Dark City of New Londo, which was governed by 4 human kings and protected by Knights of the Dark Blade. The kings were renowned for their foresight, and they even had fragments of Gwyn's very own soul bestowed upon them, so that they could better govern their people. Of course, this too was another trick of the light, for what lies at the top of New Londo but Filing Shrine, a place of undead sacrifice to Gwyn's Age of Fire. So no human city was permitted to flourish without a clear benefit.
Man, Ring City just has a beautiful view, dude. God damn, that's gorgeous. Oh, I love it.
Without a clear benefit to the Age of Fire. And there was no better example of this than another human city called Oolacile, which was the golden land of light sorceries. Light, it turns out, can be manipulated to foster illusions. It can hide your intentions, it can even mess with the fabric of time. And spells of this nature would be of great value to the gods in the coming years, so Oolacile flourished, an exemplary city for Gwyn's pantheon, because it was proof that humanity could be taught to serve their interests. And so it was that a group of missionaries from Oolacile embarked upon the Ringed City, perhaps to preach and reinforce the power of the light in this dark city. One of these missionaries was called Half-Light, and he was a talented individual who was wielding the powerful artifacts of his homeland. He would go on to earn the favor of Filianor, and he would even earn the legendary dragon weapon of Medir. So it was no surprise that Half-Light elected to stay behind, becoming the last recorded spear of the church. And just as Half-Light visited the Ringed City and even stayed behind, the reverse was also true of a certain pygmy from the Ringed City. This pygmy's name was Manus, and while we know nothing about the nature of his visit to Oolacile, we do know one thing: he died there, and the body of primeval man, of Manus, was put to rest far, far beneath the city itself, out of the light and out of mind. We don't know much about Manus, and a lot is left to the imagination. What we do know is that he was a pygmy far from home. He was a part of a race that Gwyn was doing everything in his power to suppress, and when you think on Manus's fate, it's kind of hard to imagine that Gwyn didn't have a hand in it, especially since Gwyn had an order of
Gwyn sounds like a fucking bitch.
Assassins, the Lord's Blades, in his employ. The leader of the Lord's Blades was Kiran, the Hornet. It stated that she laid waste to Gwyn's enemies, and of course, there's no proof that the Lord's Blades actually killed Manus, but you could also argue that that's rather the point of assassins, isn't it? Whatever the case, the tide was turning. Mankind was struggling against the world order, and even New Londo, which was once a haven for undead, had turned into a hideous spawning ground for the Abyss and its dark wraiths. At the heart of this uprising was a serpent named Karth, who swayed the 4 kings and taught its undead knights how to pillage back their humanity. Some descriptions even say the dark wraiths became the most human of all, but to others,
the dark wraiths are the enemies of man and any living thing that has a soul.
So as the Age of Man crept ever closer, yet another Knight of Gwyn appeared, perfectly equipped to face it, the great Knight Artorias. With a greatsword weighted to strike harder against servants of the dark, a great wolf who defined their fighting style, and a covenant with the beasts of the Abyss, Knight Artorias and Sif defiantly faced the worst of mankind. Yet, in the end, the terror that was the Dark Wraiths could only be stifled with the sacrifice of their entire city. Such was the power of their 4 kings and the resilience of their abyss. Luckily for Gwyn, such a safety measure had been put in place years ago, and so the sealers of New Londo watched stoically as water rushed into the city and thousands of innocents died by their hand.
The entire city was sacrificed to contain them, for that is how great a threat they were.
But while Gwyn did manage to put the new Londo threat on hold, no one was prepared for the outbreak in Ulasil. I imagine when they figured out that a primeval human was buried beneath their very city, the temptation must have been too great to resist.
Believe it or not, Ulasil has brought the Abyss upon itself, fooled by that toothy serpent. They upturned the grave of primeval man and incited his ornery wrath. What could they have been thinking?
Like the mad pygmy king before him, Manus rejected death, and he was as far from peace as could be. The raw emotion of humanity that we mentioned earlier billowed outwards, corrupting the townsfolk of Ulasil, and Manus became the father of an unstoppable dark abyss. Curiously though, it's almost as if he was searching for something, using his power to reach across time and space until he found it. Instead, he found Dusk, Princess of Ulasil.
I still think on that creature from the abyss that preyed upon me. My faculties were far from lucid, but I quite clearly sensed certain emotions. A wrenching nostalgia, a lost joy, an object of obsession, and a sincere hope to reclaim it. Could these thoughts belong to the beast from the abyss? But if that were true, then perhaps it is no beast after all.
The object of his obsession was a pendant, and with it in our possession, we're pulled back to a time where all appears lost.
Well, look at this one. From what far away...
To be honest, this one so far is feeling harder to follow than... And I'm gonna chalk it up to one Vati becoming a better writer as time goes on. Because again, this is an older video from Vati. This is a few years old. So I'm gonna chalk up some of it to me not knowing anything about Dark Souls, but also Vati is a much more talented storyteller currently. Like that fucking Lord of Frenzied Flame video was a masterpiece. This one's a bit more difficult to follow. So far it's not really seeming like we're getting I'm going to hold out here, hope that what he's doing here is it's all going to eventually connect back to Artorias more clearly by the end. But a part of me is also worried that maybe not, and this is just kind of background information to try and flesh things out. We'll see.
Age hast thou come. Thy scent is very human indeed, but not intolerable. I am Elizabeth, guardian of this sanctuary. Thou shalt see further on, an abyss was begat of the ancient beast, and threatens to swallow the whole of Ulasil.
The city is lost, the abyss is spreading, and mankind has succumbed to the worst parts of their nature. When Gwyn heard of Manus and his abyss, Artorias must have been the first one sent to deal with the threat. He was, after all, the best equipped, but fighting dark wraiths is considerably different to the power of primeval man. So Artorias was bested and was forced to retreat. Beset by the abyss, the final act of Artorias was to protect his companion. He shielded Sif with the divine power of his great shield. After all, his arm was broken, and he could no longer bear the burden. Then, Artorias himself was overcome.
All of you, forgive me, for I have availed you nothing.
Knight Artorias came to stop this, but such a hero has nary a murmur of dark. Without doubt he will be swallowed by the abyss, overcome by its utter blackness. Indeed, the abyss may be unstoppable.
All was lost, and yet strangely, soon after the spread of the abyss was actually halted, and Princess Dusk of Ulasil miraculously wandered out of the abyss. Artorias' name henceforth passed into legend, the knight who gave his life to disperse the abyss to rescue the Princess of Ulasil. This is a lie,
So he did
of
do
course.
it. Succeed.
In reality, it is we who rescued the princess,
Oh, never mind.
and we fulfilled the legacy of Artorias.
This may strike thine ear as somewhat peculiar, but long ago, in my homeland of Ulasil, I was beset by a creature from the abyss. I would have perished then, were it not for the great knight Artorias. In truth, I saw little of what transpired, for mine senses were already fled, but even still, there was something about Artorias, a certain balance of the humors that quite perfectly fits your semblance. Heavens, could it be that?
With this, Manus's suffering has
So we are and we are not Artorias?
ended. But Manus wasn't the only corruption of the Abyss that we killed in Ulasil. There was also Artorias. The legend of Artorias is a lie. He did not vanquish the father of the Abyss. He did not eliminate the dark wraiths of New Londo. The Abyss is unstoppable, and yet, eons later, the legend of Artorias would inspire a legion of Abyss Watchers who continue to rage against the dying of the light. Yes, the Abyss is unstoppable, but they fight.
Wait, are we and also not Artorias? Oh, don't bring the dog into it. The dog is what will make me cry, man. We have to be Artorias, because then that's why the puppy is reacting to us in this way, right?
Short film on Dark Souls 3 because it's inspiring stuff. He's just getting his channel started, and his upcoming
Okay. It is shot beautifully. Overall, this is good. It just ultimately, I don't know. I'm left very confused regarding Artorias and exactly, really kind of confused on the events here. I think Vati's current work, he's definitely a whole lot better at explaining uh the confusing stuff. He's much better nowadays at making the story more clear. And I think that's what's missing here. Some further it's kind of like he's nowadays I feel like he's more open to talking about his hypotheses in these sorts of videos. Whereas back then, here it kind of seems like he's just saying what really I'm assuming is information actively provided by the video game, by the game, um, and its story within. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure just because I don't know anything about Dark Souls. I am confused, but also I am intrigued. Like Vati is very good at also hooking you, at keeping you like locked in. Vati is really good at that bit, right? Despite being confused here, despite not really having a fucking clue what's happening. The entire video here, I was definitely interested, intrigued, curious about what's going on. And I think that lends itself to just Fati's skill as a writer / talent, his ability to like make these videos and stuff like that. But yeah, that was Prepare to Cry Remastered, The Legend of Artorias the Abysswalker. I hope you guys enjoyed as well as I did. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.